Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, watchers, my name is Brandon Lewis. I'm your executive producer, host, and founder of Brandon's World. Welcome to the third State of the Sport, where we will be taking a hard look at what is really going on in various sports over the summer with a subject matter expert. Today, friend of the show, David Profusek, will be dissecting the current state of college football. During the course of the last few seasons, college football has undergone a dramatic change. Name, image, likeness, or NIL for short, has completely changed the game in college sports, but especially football. Now, players who would be sitting on the bench at a big name school have gone to smaller schools to play right away due to money. It's created a free for all in the college sports recruiting landscape that has caused head coaches like Lincoln Riley, Mario Cristobal, and Brian Kelly to leave their roles at Oklahoma, Oregon, and Notre Dame for USC, Miami, Florida, and LSU, respectively. Starting last season, the Big Ten expanded to include USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon, while the SEC snatched Texas and Oklahoma from the Big 12, essentially eliminating the Pac 12 and creating two super conferences. Both conferences received new media deals, with the Big Ten securing contracts with Fox, CBS, and NBC, while the SEC went to ESPN and ABC. The super conferences also forced the expansion of the 14 college football playoff to 12 teams, which featured four first round byes and first round matchups at the higher seeds building. Changes in college football continue to happen this offseason as Bill Belichick joined the college ranks, along with former NFL general manager Michael Lombardi, as they headed to Chapel Hill in North Carolina. The Belichick Lombardi pairing sparked the beginning of the general manager era in college football to help deal with NIL. And in this wild era of recruiting, next to Deion Sanders at Colorado, there may not be a more anticipatory debut in the sport than Belichick in North Carolina. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the man who's going to help the audience of Brandon's World understand the state of college football. He is a college football expert. He is David Profusek.
Thanks for having me on, Brandon. Super excited to talk college football with you. It's one of my favorite things, something I've enjoyed, gosh, for at least 15 years of my 25 years. And um, I don't know, this is something I've been very much looking forward to.
Yeah, we're going to obviously get into all the changes that I talked about right there in the opening with NIL and recruitment and the schedules and conference realignment and even potential more college football playoff expansion. Before we do that, though, I thought it would be kind of right to go through like the top 10, maybe 15, maybe 20, depending on how we feel, legitimate teams. Obviously, at this point, the rankings are not official yet. I couldn't really find an exact, like, here's the top 25 entering the season.
Hmm.
So it sort of went off like based off polls. Here's what some people think could be the ranking. So these may not be in exact order, but we're going to start with the team that may have the best chance to win the national championship because they may have the best quarterback in college football this year. He is a Manning, and he's out of Texas, and he's replacing Quinn Ewers, and that is Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns with Steve Sarkisian in the SEC.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the especially with Texas, the optics are because he's a Manning, he's going to be generational. Not saying that he's not going to be, but like he didn't have tons of playing time last year being behind Ewers, which could be a benefit, him learning behind a veteran QB who's got like tons of experience to lend to him before, throwing him into the fire. But in terms of at least like from a roster building standpoint, Texas does look to be a very, very strong team, especially so if Arch Manning like fits the bill of the hype train, if you will.
Now, this next team we're going to talk about, they are the reigning defending national champions. They lost their offensive coordinator, though, in Chip Kelly, who I do think had a big success in their team last year. They also lost Jim Knowles as well to Penn State, their defensive coordinator. But David, they may have, and we've seen a lot of great wide receivers come out of this university and come out of college football in general, especially the last half decade. They may have the best of them all in Jeremiah Smith, who this kid, I believe he's only 19 years old. And I swear, if he went into the NFL draft this past April, he might have been a top 10 pick.
I would fully believe that. He has been insane. Being in Ohio and everything and seeing Ohio State games somewhat regularly, seeing his highlights. He is unbelievable for his age, an absolute five-star plus, 6-star recruit coming out of high school, and he has been all that and more. With like I mean, I wish, you know, Browns, for example, draft him or something in the future. He's a fantastic talent.
What do you think about Ohio State's chances this year? I know they have a new quarterback. Tell us a little bit about him and what the team's going to look like this year.
So, like, that's the interesting thing with Ohio State. In terms of most schools, when you think of sort of like the transfer portal era and everything, Ohio State, for the most part, this past year, kept pretty much everybody. Like, everybody's like, they either obviously have the people who jump to the NFL and everything, but they did not lose much within the transfer portal. So like they kept a lot of those same players around, which is obviously good for cohesion, and knowing the system. The biggest question for me when sort of like looking at Ohio State's roster and what to expect for this upcoming season easily is going to be the quarterback position. Um, a lot of people are saying that, or at least from the looks of it, Julian Sayin is likely to be the starter. With a,
He's a California kid, am I wrong?
I believe so. So like, he's definitely like from a, you know, a good quarterback part of the country, for at least like recruits and everything in the past. It'll be interesting. A lot of how Ohio State does this season hinges on that quarterback, and obviously that's the case with a lot of teams, but especially with this situation in particular. Will Howard last year may have not been the flashiest quarterback on the planet, but he did enough and limited mistakes enough to keep the motor running for the offense. And it's a question of, can't will he be something like that? Will he elevate it, or will him not being the most experienced quarterback at this point in time be a hindrance for the offense? Like that's going to be the most interesting aspect of watching the Buckeyes this season.
Let's stay in the Big Ten. You know, a couple of years ago, before Lincoln Riley got the job at USC, there was a lot of rumors that the head coach at Penn State, James Franklin, was at least offered the job, turned it down, then obviously took a contract extension with Penn State. One of the reasons is because he got this quarterback in Drew Adler close to my neck of the woods in Medina of Ohio. The general consensus is that this is the best team Franklin's ever had. I know obviously they lost Abdul Carter on the defensive line and some other talent, but for the most part, they're fully back. And some people are even predicting them to win the Big Ten this year.
I would also agree with that statement that this might be the strongest team James Franklin has ever had at Penn State, hands down. Similar to Ohio State in a lot of ways, they didn't have a ton of loss from like the transfer portal. Obviously, the loss of a talent like Abdul Carter, obviously, you know, hurts a little bit. But in general, like the team is still super strong. I wouldn't say I'm as high on Drew Aller as some people are. Personally, I feel like he hasn't like really stepped it up to the point where like he is that, like what some people may think he could potentially be, high draft pick next year or something along those lines. But like he's
Yeah.
experienced, he's been in the system all his entire time in college, which is rare for starting college quarterbacks at this point in time. Like he knows what he's doing. So like it plus they kept Nick Singleton and they have one of the strongest running back rooms in the country. So like it's going to be potent. It's going to be interesting to see if like Penn State can get over that hump that they seem to like always like lose to Ohio State or like have some sort of fallback where like they don't meet the expectations of the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said before Andy Reid got the Super Bowls in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, I always compared James Franco to the Andy Reid of college football, where it's like you just win a lot of regular season games and then falter in the postseason or, falter in the big moments. How do you think Jim Knowles is going to impact the Penn State defense?
That is an interesting conundrum, honestly, like in my mind, because like Jim Knowles, great defensive coordinator. He like in terms of like at least bringing a defensive mind to really make a strong defense even stronger. It they're definitely going to be improved so long as everyone buys into that system over there. Um, One aspect I'm super curious about is like how is that going to affect the Ohio State Penn State game later in the season, especially because him coming from Ohio State. Like they both know each other. Ohio State knows how Jim Knowles likes to coach. Jim Knowles knows what Ohio State has, and like it'll be an interesting chess match for sure.
Let's go now to a team that, again, in my list, some people had them even in the top three. Some people had them closer to like 10, but I'm surprised this team is so far up there. Maybe I'm missing something. The team I'm talking about is out of the ACC. It's Dabo Sweeney and the Clemson Tigers, who have historically not, as we know, been involved in the transfer portal. But last year, they were ranked like 16 in the country. Why is the polling on them around the country seemingly so high?
I mean, it's consistency. So like at the end of the day, Clemson has done a great job, at least at the bare minimum. Like Dabo Sweeney like runs a consistent ship generally. Last year was definitely a down year for Clemson. Having four losses in a season is unheard of, based off of the past like decade or so, where Clemson was, you know, up there with Alabama, winning national championships year in, year out. It's just and it's interesting that they don't dip so much in the transfer portal, but I don't know if they're going to be a great team again this year. I would not be surprised if they had a good year and definitely made the playoff. But again, it like many other situations, the most important position in sports. I feel like a lot of their success at the end of the day will fall on the offense and Kate Klubnik and see how he performs here as he's gotten a couple years under his belt.
What is it about this club neck? Because I've heard of Kim in the hat along with Adler and obviously Manning as the top quarterbacks in the country this year. But is it more? He's more of a pocket guy, correct?
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily extend too many plays with his legs. He's definitely more of a passing threat than he is a rushing threat. So more traditional pocket passer.
I gotcha. All right. Well, I want to move to the next team on the list. They are in the SEC. They won the SEC last year. A team that my Philadelphia Eagles know a lot because they draft a lot of players from this school. The Georgia Bulldogs with Kirby Smart, who they sort of feel like they're going through, I don't want to say a reset because they're certainly potential championship contenders. The defense is always going to be good. But it does feel like because of this new era of recruiting in college football, they're just not as dominant as they used to be.
And like all great empires and dynasties, they can't all last forever. Eventually there's going to be those hiccups and everything. The especially like last year. You only can have like the greatest quarterback player for such a long amount of time. Um, Carson Beck is definitely a good quarterback. It just didn't fully develop there to put Georgia like over the top. And it'll be interesting to see how they kind of use this like off season to kind of, like you were saying, reset a little bit, get more solid foundation for another title run, which a roster of their caliber is definitely, on the table for doing again this year, like they've had several times in the past 5 years.
Yeah, you know what's weird is it's like they won those back-to-back national championships, but did the, I know the one was a blowout. I don't remember if the first one was or not. Did they win against Bama or Clemson? I'm trying to remember who they won the first time. Was it Bama?
It was Bama, I believe.
Yeah. And then the second one, that was the Washington team, right? With Penix?
No,
That
that was against Michigan. That was
oh,
Michigan, Washington. They played. Oh, you're testing me right now.
I know it's only 2 years ago, but that's my point. It feels like forever ago. They played it. Who's the kid that got drafted by the Chargers? He was the quarterback. They got stopped. I remember the game. I could have sworn it was Washington
Here, I'm gonna give you the answer here in just a second. Um,
because Michigan played Washington. Remember?
yes.
Yeah, it was.
Um,
Oh no, TCU, TCU.
yes, it was TCU. Yep. Duggan.
Max Duggan, that's his name. Yep, could not remember the name. See, that's what doing a podcast here, live internet research is for.
That
But
was the blowout.
yeah, doesn't that feel like forever ago though, from a Georgia perspective? It's weird.
It does. Well, also doesn't help that game wasn't super memorable due to the
No,
blowout.
not at all. The
So
only thing we remember is Georgia won. We don't even remember the score or who they
it
played.
it was 65-7. I just checked. So
Yeah.
not a good day for TCU. But I mean, isn't that the case with a lot of SEC teams? It's like if you don't win a national championship, the season was a failure. Like
Yeah.
same thing with Alabama. So it's like it's
And
it's always
the
a
The Big
we're
Ten now feels like that too. Ohio State, especially Penn State. You could make the argument when Harbaugh was at Michigan, Michigan felt that way.
not to be a Yankee here, but in terms of like the playoff allowing more opportunities for like the northern teams to get in and try to make some noise. In some ways I feel like it has kind of leveled the playing field
Yeah.
to a degree, especially with the transfer portal and everything becoming even more of a floodgate for, hey, if I can't get playing time, I'm the third string tight end or whatever at Georgia, I'm gonna go to Penn State or
Yeah.
something and
Or even like
immediately start.
Vanderbilt, right? Or Kentucky, like stay in the same conference and immediately start.
And also you have an opportunity to be like, hey, you should have started me if you beat them, you know? It's
Yes.
like it's such an interesting dynamic that is just, again, like growing up majority of my life, this was not the case. It's it's such an ever evolving situation where it's like it's hard to keep up with what is the norm, what's still evolving and everything like that.
You brought him up, so I'll just ask you, what do you think year two is going to be like for Kalen DeVore in Tuscaloosa?
I So here's the thing. It's like you go from the best coach probably in college football history with Nick Saban, with having that much success in the modern era. It's something that is just unprecedented, and like with the exception of FCS, North Dakota State or Division III Mount Union, like you don't get that this day and age, and like that drop off and like is definitely something of note. DeBoer's a good coach. He made a Washington team that was kind of like for like a good while become a national championship contender. He's definitely has the opportunity to like especially now having the branding, the name, the the legacy of Alabama behind him to really build a strong contender. I feel like last year was definitely a year of like kind of like figuring things out in a way, new situation, but I don't feel like Alabama is going to be as dominant as they were during the Nick Saban era. It'll be interesting to see if like within year two, especially with new quarterback situation with Milroe leaving for the NFL, they'll be able to right the ship and get back to a level where at least Alabama makes the playoff, which is definitely in the cards. But like you never really like until things become a little bit more like the norm during the DeBoer era. It'll be interesting to see if like these letdowns are more of a commonality of him joining the SEC or that was just like first year, we'll give him a pass, see what happens going forward.
I want to stay in the SEC real quick, then we'll jump to those predominant other Big Ten teams. I think that'll be sort of the easiest way to do it is by conference here as we get into these teams that are sort of in similar situations. Um, Listen, Brian Kelly has sort of struggled at LSU. They've been good. They haven't been great. It sort of feels like they should be national championship contenders, but they're not. We all remember the early on he tried to do the Louisiana Southern accent that didn't work out. Maybe it's taken him a few years, like we kind of expect Kalen DeVore to do, to sort of learn how to recruit down there. But I don't know. LSU and even USC to some extent with Lincoln Riley down there, like those two guys were brought in to win those two franchises national championships, and they both don't feel better off, in my opinion, at least.
I agree. I mean, this is kind of like where I land. I I guess for full disclosure, I'm not the biggest Brian Kelly guy. Uh, um, one of my friends who's a big Notre Dame fan was not a big fan of him when he was the coach there. I mean, he's a good coach. He has a pedigree for winning, but like not when it comes to postseason national championship opportunities, things like that. Um, I personally I don't know. It is a conundrum because you would think with a coach with that much experience, that big of a name, and going to one of the essentially blue bloods of college football, you would think that would be a match made in heaven. Um, but like it it's always interesting how like location fit things like that like play a factor. Same thing with Lincoln Riley. You would think him coming over, him having so much success, especially with quarterbacks and everything at Oklahoma, would induce a renaissance of the Trojan football from when Pete Carroll was leading the charge back in the mid 2000s. But like it it's just interesting how that works out in terms of like I don't know. It is a conundrum. It's hard for me to even put like a real like this is the issue. This is the problem. Um, Maybe it's coaching philosophy in some ways too. Like I know like one criticism for Lincoln Riley, for example, is like offensively he gets the guys, but defensively like that's where he like really struggles to
Yeah,
like
no,
build that
the
side.
defense for USC was terrible, and it was terrible at Oklahoma. They would just win shootouts. But it also does feel like since he's gotten to USC, the offense has gotten worse every year he's been there.
I mean, it also doesn't help that he lost Caleb Williams last year. So like that
But
that's also a point.
it is. But I think the other point is, and maybe it's because they lost a bunch of offensive linemen to the NFL, but Caleb's best year with Lincoln was his first year there, not the second year at USC.
That was the case, huh? It's been a while since I thought about that.
Yeah.
Um,
If you remember, that was the biggest knock on Caleb when he came out for the Bears, that he had a better first year under Lincoln at USC than he did that senior year.
that is true. I mean, you see that sometimes with some athletes, like they have like a sophomore slump of some sort, kind of like after the big like breakout year.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like because people are like maybe keying in on you more and aspects like that. Um, I don't know. That is something like I would honestly need to do a little bit more research on myself. It's hard to keep track of like every beat of every
Yeah, no, that's
130
fair.
whatever FBS teams there are. It's hard to keep track as they keep adding one or two every year now.
That's fair. All right, let's go to two teams that lost their quarterbacks to the NFL. One of them was the number one overall pick, Cam Ward, obviously leaving Miami, Florida. But at least according to these rankings, they should still be around the top 10-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that they got Carson Beck in the transfer portal. They got a veteran guy who like is a good quarterback. Do
Okay,
I
so
think
that's where he went. I did not know
that
that.
is where
So
he went?
so Beck is now so that makes sense to me then.
Yeah, so like it and like somewhat similar, like kind of like feeling I have with Drew Allard at Penn State. Like, are they good quarterbacks? Are they know what they're doing? Yes. Do I think they are like the elite tier of quarterback? I don't quite know. I want them to prove it this year, with their experience and everything. But like Miami definitely isn't going to have like a gigantic drop off at the position. So long as Beck stays healthy, I feel like they'll still be a good team. I wouldn't say for me they're like a deep playoff run contending level, but like they'll at least be like competitive in pretty much every game.
They're going from a completely different style quarterback too, from Cam Ward to Beck. But I do think Cristobal is a really good coach, especially when it comes to offensive line. Like I think he's just this tough, demanding physical coach, and his teams, even in Oregon, they were very physical.
No, absolutely. I mean, just in general, like Miami also too, like they have the branding. They are the U. So like at the end of the day, you're gonna get South Florida athletes, which are some of the best in college football. Um, so like it'll just be interesting to see if Miami can like fully put it together. Because they haven't really been back fully since the dreaded 2002 championship against the Buckeyes. It just has not been the same since.
Let's go to his former team. Let's talk about Dan Lanning in Oregon. Obviously, they lose Dylan Gabriel in the draft. Too. I thought Dylan Gabriel was a good college quarterback. I'm not going to get into my thoughts of what I think he is at the NFL level, but Oregon, what do we think of them? Because they go to the Big Ten. We all remember the classic game last year against Ohio State. We remember the rematch of Ohio State putting the boots into them in the CFP. And again, they sort of feel like they're a good team. They probably will make the playoff again, but they're not like real national championship contenders. They only got the number one seed because they mostly played an easy schedule, and then they got the hardest bracket in the entire CFP.
That's part of the reason why they did a few adjustments to the to the bracket going
Yes.
forward. But um, on topic with Oregon, it I definitely expect a step back. Is it going to be a gigantic step back? I don't believe so. Like I see them losing probably two regular season
So
games is what
you think they're like third in the Big Ten, maybe right there with like a Michigan, like 3, 4, right behind Penn State, Ohio State.
somewhere in that I think would be probably where I put them. And like this is becoming a broken record at this point, but it's gonna come down to quarterback. They
Yeah.
got Dante Moore out of the transfer portal. Him coming over from I believe UCLA.
What is he like? What's his play style like?
He's definitely more of a dual threat. He
Okay.
definitely will use his legs from time to time, if I remember correctly. Um, he was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. Well, actually, looking at his stats, he did not run too much, or maybe he got sacked too much because he had negative 84 rushing yards. But
Oof.
the in terms of him, at least as an athlete, he was a five-star recruit. Like he was a good player, like at least coming out of high school, and then coming to UCLA, which that program has just not gotten their footing at all for a long, long time. Like he didn't necessarily go to the most like starting as a first year freshman quarterback situation. It's so like Oregon just being a better program for getting recruits is definitely going to be a healthier environment, especially the success Dan Lanning has had with quarterbacks. It's just going to be a question of, you know, it like has will he live up to his original assessment coming out of high school? And like that will play a big role from Oregon being maybe they only lose one game or something like that to them like maybe losing three games, dare I say four. Like quarterback is always like a major factor for football teams, especially in college.
Last question in terms of the top teams. I don't understand at all, so you're gonna have to help me because you're the college football expert.
Okay.
Why in every poll that I'm reading is Illinois near the top 10 or like 11 or 12?
I think the reason for that is like they've I think it's because of the defense, if I remember correctly. I'm pulling them up just to make sure I have all the things in front of me. But
Like,
like
did they get a five-star recruit? Because McCord's in the NFL now. Like, who the hell is even their quarterback?
I'm looking right now. Hey, I'm actually glad you brought this up because like this is something I should have probably had a little bit more
Because
of a look
out
into.
of all the teams, I see them ranked above Michigan, and I'm like, what?
Which if you pay attention to college football, that's weird. Almost as weird as Indiana being Indiana last year.
Yeah, I mean it's like this isn't college basketball, it's college football. Like,
Right. Um, I think because like if I remember correctly, Bielema is the coach there right now, if I remember correctly. Which he's a good coach. He has a good great success. Like he was originally like coach at Wisconsin, then he went down to the SEC and he was at Arkansas for like 6 years, something like that. And like he's a good coach, and has had some good teams. So like they have at least that in terms of like someone steering the ship, which is always a positive. Um, in terms of, let's see here if they got someone interesting from the transfer portal in particular. The so that like again, I think in the past couple of years, big thing is like they've done really well in terms of like building a defense. This is taking me forever.
okay, well, let me ask you real quick though. I mean, this is college football. I know that, defense has mattered more in recent years than in years past, but
Right.
it's still not the end all be all in college football. We've talked about most of these teams, it comes down to quarterback. Is I mean, you're like, oh, they have a good defense. Sort of reminds me of like Iowa. Like they have a great defense, they can't move the ball.
And that's the crazy thing with Iowa. If they could move the ball, they would be up there with
Yeah,
like
I
every
mean,
other team.
their punter, I'm pretty sure led their offense in yards last year.
I believe that
It,
1,000,000%.
it was, but while you're looking for that, we could always come back to it.
Okay.
This team's not ranked in the top 20, but obviously I'm going to have to ask you about it because I think they will be there by the end of the year. I think there's a strong chance they do finish in the top 12 and make the CFP. What the hell do we think of Belichick in North Carolina, man? I mean, I think it's the wildest story ever. I didn't believe it when it happened.
I don't even get me started. The Belichick situation, see, I think that's where like I differ a little bit in terms of like I don't know if they'll make the college football playoff. Because my reasoning is this: Belichick has lived his entire life in the NFL. He basically has been an NFL guy, and like similar to how like we've seen college coaches go to the NFL and they just cannot get it done. Saban is a big like example of that, and
Did,
he is
did
the
you
greatest college football coach
did you
ever.
see that rumor, by the way? Because it's kind of on topic that Saban may be going back to the NFL.
To
I
the
don't buy it.
NFL.
I don't buy it, but that's the rumor out there that Saban, could potentially come out of broadcasting, and the rumor would be he would be interested in the NFL more than college, which to me is so weird. And the weirdest thing about the whole Belichick thing is we all know him and Saban's relationship. I thought for sure Saban was going to tell Bill, do TV. Don't go into
Uh,
college football. This is a mess. Because we know Saban doesn't like NIL.
no.
I thought he would have told him this is gimmicky. This is stupid. You don't want to get involved in this. And then when Belichick got there, I was like, oh, easily. Okay, he's going to be there 1 year. He's going to pass the baton to his son, Steve, and he's going to get back in the NFL. And it sounds like Belichick's there for the long haul. Like, I don't know, man. I think it's the most fascinating thing. I cannot wait for that Labor Day matchup.
That's what I'm saying. Like like obviously some coaches make that transition just fine. Like for example, again, I'm doing more college to NFL examples because that's more common. But like Harbaugh, for example, he ended up making that transition pretty well. It's what my question is: will the Bill Belichick level of like discipline work in a college setting is like the biggest like question, but also at the same time it who knows who's actually in control there with some of the stuff going on with the
Uh,
relationship
Well,
stuff.
that's crazy too, because there was all these reports about North Carolina, was concerned about her, and then the report came out that after June 1st, Belichick had a buyout of 1 million, and it was like, well, if that's the case, Belichick could not even coach a game in North Carolina. And the funny thing was, the other day I was listening to The Herd with Colin Cowherd, and he had Eric Mangini on. And Mangini said Belichick always told him back in the day he would never coach college football because, and I quote, there's too many bake sales.
And also too, it's like, and my dad made this like point too, which I found like, yeah, that checks. Is like he doesn't seem like the guy who would make a like a visit and like be in like a an athlete's like parents, like house, like in
No,
their
and
living
the
room.
craziest thing was the one day he was on the Pat McAfee show and he's in his car and Steve's in there with him and he's like, "Yeah, Pat, we're late for our appearance at school. They're outside of high school." I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
"What
yeah.
the hell is going on?" Bill Belichick is recruiting kids. And like I get it from the kids' perspective, like, oh my God, we may get to be coached by the best coach ever in the history of football. You could make the argument. But also, Bill, and I think this is what sort of separates Bill from Nick. Nick was able to adapt in college. Alabama used to be defense, defense, defense. In the last few years he was there, they had one of the best offenses in football and they couldn't stop anybody. Bill hasn't been able to figure out offense for 20 years outside of Brady.
Right. I don't know. It that is definitely going to be kind of like how like 2 years ago we were like, or even last year after the first year, like with Dion, like how is this going to work out? This is a like very much like the same kind of like situation, just a slight variant of it. Like this is a big name coming to a um technically a big brand school, but not like a blue blood of the sport or anything like that, or at least they have not had success in a very, very long time. And it's like, can you elevate that team from being middle of the conference to bottom of the conference on a regular basis to being that top team? It'll be interesting also, like, I guess going back to Dion for a quick little sidebar, like, does he continue to elevate in year three or with Bill Belichick? Does he get UNC at least to a respectable position than they were kind of under Mac Brown the past couple of years?
Did you see their schedule? Because I have it up. I can read it to you.
I can pull it up in a second.
So they host TCU. That's the Labor Day
I feel
matchup.
that's a winnable game, yeah.
Then they go to Charlotte.
Oh, they're playing the 49ers, Charlotte 49ers.
Then they host Richmond. Then
And
they go to UCF. So their first hard game is they host Clemson October 4th.
which they got at least the benefit of hosting as opposed to going to Death Valley.
Then they also play like California, Virginia. Syracuse would be a tough game. That's on Halloween. That's a Friday night, by the way.
And it's in the dome.
Yes.
So that is definitely a hostile environment. I've been to a couple SU games and especially with the Fran Brown era being as successful as it was last year, like it's going to be rocking in there.
But then they finish with Stanford, Wake Forest, Duke, and North Carolina State. There is like 8 or 9 W's maybe on here.
I would say the one game that like I would not be surprised if they lost is definitely Clemson, but
Yeah.
Syracuse and like I feel like they'll drop I like either the Duke game or the North Carolina State game or something like that. 'Cause that like that's their rivals. That's their
Yeah.
like big rivals. So like with those matchups, like you always like never quite exactly know what's gonna happen. And just look at Ohio State this past year against a Michigan team that was not the greatest. So in terms of at least performance. So like I definitely like it 9 wins is the expectation. Can they get over that number is kind of like where my mind is at.
So, David, we know last year was the first implementation of the 12-team college football playoff. I've been back and forth on it. I think that the regular season was diminished just a little bit by it. I get they wanted more opportunities and all that. I kind of felt like 12 was just a little bit too much. But now this year, they're which I'm glad they're doing, by the way, is they're moving off the, automatic buys for the top 4 conferences, and they're just gonna rank them 1 for 12. But there's talks in there about maybe this gets expanded to 16 down the line, maybe more than that. And I've told you before, my fear is, uh-oh, college football is going to sort of become March Madness-esque.
Right. And I don't want it to necessarily become that. Here's my counterpoint to it. I am not against 16 teams in this situation, but it's never going to happen because there's way too much money in it. I'm like, if you want it to be a true tournament for all the conferences, every single conference champion should get a spot. They might get destroyed, but that happens in college basketball with like the 1 seeds and the 16 seeds. That's something like I would love to see. So like you could potentially see a Kent State, maybe, probably not anytime soon, like make it to the college football playoff along with all of the other small teams. And I feel like that also could be a bit, I know this is a bit of a sidebar, but also could be a bit of a way to almost like level out the playing field a little more. Cause like maybe less players would make that jump to like a mid-level power four team if they have like in their back pocket, hey, if we win our conference we are guaranteed to go to the big thing and maybe make some noise. Is something I would love to see if they were to expand to 16, but like I said, too much money, politics and stuff like that going into it. I think the 12 team was good. But I guess that's my 2 cents on that with a little extra on top.
Oh, I'm fascinated by it because I actually want to ask you more about that because the difference between football and basketball is obviously most football games are being played outdoors as opposed to indoors in basketball arenas. And we know that with the CFP, there is home field advantage in the first round. So you could see warm weather teams going to outdoor, and all that. So I guess my question for you is, under that scenario, is twofold. One, do you get rid of conference championship weekend? And then two, when do you start the thing so you're not going knee deep into the NFL playoffs, but you obviously can't play football every day. So to me, it's more of like a scheduling conflict, right?
It is. I mean, I like the conference championship because I like it definitively like you win the conference instead of it coming down to like a fluky tiebreaker or something like that. In some cases. Like I like
Well, the issue last year was Oregon got punished for winning the Big Ten, and Penn State benefited for losing that game.
that is
N-
true.
Now I think that obviously with the changing of the seating, maybe it will matter more. But also with the new format, it's a little bit unfair, I think personally, to have a conference championship game because you lose that one game and you're knocked down seeding, but you were, maybe you're undefeated going into that game. If you lose that game to a team that's won two losses, well, they're all of a sudden ranked ahead of you because they beat you. Like, I I don't know. I just feel like we don't really need the championship anymore if we're gonna have 12 teams because the 12 teams should have already been decided anyway.
I see what you're saying. I guess I'm conflicted. A little bit of the traditionalist in me, like, doesn't want to see conference championship games go away. I guess that may be like part of it. Um, the thing I just like really like about because like I guess if you wanted to be consistent with um the other sports that have tournaments like this, it's like
Yeah,
the conference champion gets the automatic bid. So it's like,
right.
um, and like I'm not against a little bit of extra chaos too. Like I think it's interesting, especially it like could create some really interesting games if you have like a team that like this is our one chance to make the playoff at this
Right.
point.
I
Um,
I guess my take on it is like, let's say Ohio State, for example, had two losses, and one
mhm.
of those losses was to Penn State. Let's say Penn State is undefeated going into it, they're number two or something, and Ohio State's eight. Well, if Ohio State beats Penn State in the conference championship game, does that rank them ahead of Penn State? Like that in my head, mathematically, that doesn't make sense, but I guess that's the way the ranking would put it.
I mean, not necessarily. Like in terms of like obviously that comes down to the playoff committee on if they actually jump Penn State, but like if Penn State's 12 and 0 going into championship weekend and Ohio State's 10 and 2, like they definitely like obviously Penn State still has the better record. They perform, they beat Ohio State, especially if it's a close game. I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily see that as like they would jump Penn State. Um, but like um
Well, here's the other thing. Do we still need the committee? I mean, doesn't it feel like that we could do this with like the AP poll and the journalists, everybody else that ranks them, up until November? The whole point of the committee was to get the best four teams. Well, now with the 12, there's really no fight. I mean, I guess you could fight between 12 and 13, but like the fighting is more like should this team be an 8 seed or should they be a 60? You know?
Right. I mean, I would be fine with that. I especially wasn't as big of a fan of the committee last time, or like when it was the four teams
Well,
too,
because they
because like
always got it wrong, and the criteria was never
there's too
the
much
same.
politics, too much money, too much, like they want to put the big brand like names in. And a great example is the first ever one. Like, don't get me wrong, Ohio State, they got in, they did what they needed to do, they won the thing. But let's be honest here, TCU, you could make the argument back in that year, they were more deserving in that period of time, but Ohio State probably got the
Oh,
nod because they
remember
were the bigger name.
UCF went on that run. Where they go like two straight years undefeated or something like that, and they never got considered.
They won, they went undefeated and then lost their bowl game the following year. They basically went almost in a complete 2 seasons without losing a game, which you can make that argument. They deserve to be in because, like, they did everything in their power to be there. That's also, I guess, part of the reason why I'm such a big proponent of having an automatic bid for every conference champion. Because, for example, if you have a team like, I don't know, like Western Michigan when they had Corey Davis, they absolutely, shredded their competition. They did everything in their power. They won every single game, I believe, up until their bowl game. And they obviously were not going to get in, but it's like, what else can we do? It's almost like going to a group of five team, like what's the point if you're not ever going to actually probably make a championship with there only being the one bid for the top ranked group of five team, you know?
Yeah, I guess my concern about it is you're adding two more games, and the college football playoff schedule was already as tight as it was. I mean, if you remember last year, the national championship game was coming off. I think it was the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, and it was going into conference weekend. It was on MLK Day, and no one really cared about it that much. And it was like, wow, this thing used to end January 1st. Now we're in January 20th. If you had two more games, are we pushing this thing closer to the Super Bowl?
I mean, this is the way I look at it. And it would just break a little bit from tradition. So like I like on a traditional schedule, it was, you usually have a week in between each opponent typically. What say after like conference championship weekend, you immediately go in instead of there being a big break or like as large of a break
Yeah.
as
Well,
there
I
was.
do think that what did the 18 thing start like 2 weeks? It wasn't like a month break, but I try to remember it. The first round happened, and then I think the teams got like a full week, right?
I believe that was the case this past year.
So maybe you shorten that a little bit. Um,
Or
you know,
like
you
maybe not have the full like 2 week break before the national championship. Maybe make it just the 1 week or
well,
something.
the other thing is don't put it on a Monday.
I
I
hate that. I thank you for bringing that up.
like I know there's NFL games going on. I get it because the NFL likes to take everything over. But
You
you
got to put
know,
it on a Saturday.
well, they did this semifinal game on a Friday. I'm wondering why not just do it on a Friday?
Friday or a Saturday would just make so much more sense. And also,
Yes.
you would probably increase your viewership
Yes.
also. Putting on a Monday is just like handicapping yourself in
And the
terms
game
of
does the other thing is college football games take longer than the NFL because of all the clock stoppages. And the game doesn't start to almost 9 o'clock Eastern time.
right. Well, I mean, college football's gotten quicker. Like they've eliminated the clock always stopping when there's a first down like 2 years ago. It's becoming a lot more like the NFL, especially as there's a 2 minute timeout. I don't know why they don't call it a 2 minute warning. They probably
They
NFL's
they they
probably
talked about it on the broadcast. Something about I remember ESPN or some broadcast said it
probably
very
like
early. It it
trademarked it or
it, it
something.
wasn't that the NFL trademarked it. It was that the college football wants to be distinctively different from the NFL in
Uh
that way, and they are literally banning the announcers from saying 2 minute warning.
But
So
regardless, it's like the NFL and college football is becoming so much more alike as
yes.
the college football is becoming just the minor leagues essentially for the NFL in a way with how with NIL and all that, you
Yeah,
know.
no, it is. I mean, it's completely different. The NBA and college basketball, maybe NIL was starting to help college basketball a little bit. It's another conversation for another day. But the NBA and college basketball have always felt so far apart, and the NFL and college football have always felt so close together, which is why I think the NFL draft is becoming more popular because we watch these kids on Saturdays. Some of them 3, 4 years, we watch them at their schools grow up. And then we want to root for them on Sundays, and we already know who the hell they are for the most part, at least the first rounders and most of the second rounders now.
And in the NBA too, you get guys that are one and dones or they're from overseas, and you're like, who is this
And we have
guy?
no idea who they are, never heard of them, so you can't have a reaction. Where in college football, like you said, a lot of people watch it just like the NFL every Saturday and every Sunday during the fall, watching nonstop football because it truly is America's sport now. But it goes back to what you said, because this is how I sort of wanted to wrap it up today. There's been this conversation over the last week, and it's sort of starting to come up again about salary cap for NIL and potential NIL restrictions. Where are we going with NIL? Because I can tell you this, the purpose of it was not what it is now.
No, it's the Wild West. Pandora's box was opened. It is um like dealings on the dark web, whatever like analogy you want to use. It's like it all hell's breaking loose, and there's not much you can do about it right now. I would love to see regulations. Like one thing I myself like would love to see, which again, like I'm all for parity amongst like all the teams. Obviously, the Ohio States of the world are going to be the Ohio States of the world. The Alabamas are going to be the Alabamas, and like the mid-tier teams are more likely than not always going to be your I don't know, your Tulanes of the world, your Wyomings of the world, where they're not going to be like the biggest teams, but like if you have some sort of like regulations where like every college player in football, no matter what school you're at, this is how much you can get.
Like
It
you
like
can spend like I don't know what the number would be based off your total budget at your school for everything you've earned. You get 20% or whatever for NIL. Because I don't think you're gonna say, for example, every D1 school in the nation gets $100 million to spend on NIL. Like I don't think that's realistic. I think it has to
no.
depend on like school size. But yeah,
Or
I don't
like
know.
because like situations like the Nico situation back like a couple months ago
Oh,
with
with the
him
Tennessee
with the
quarterback, yeah.
Tennessee quarterback and him basically being like, I want, like 4 million or whatever it was. And now, like that whole situation just like really exposed the underbelly of like the dark side of this, where like college athletes are trying to negotiate with their teams instead of it just being like about the passion for your school and your
Yeah.
teammates, which it like is something that like I hate to see.
You
It's
know,
like,
the other thing too, right? Like I feel bad for the basketball players do good, but sometimes I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the baseball players. I feel bad for the volleyball players. I feel bad for the golf people. Like it feels
uh,
like NIL, it was supposed to be for the entire college. And it's like, no, we're putting for a school that's maybe a football and a basketball school, we're putting 80% into football and maybe 20% into basketball at best.
right.
Most of them are like, we're putting in 95% for football, and if we have one good kid at our basketball school, maybe we'll pay him a little something.
That's completely true because like football is king at most like universities. If they have a football team, like that's the thing, unless they're a Gonzaga, for
Yeah.
example.
It's like, oh, sorry, best pitcher in America. We can't pay you because we got to pay our backup left guard $3 million.
Right. It That's also like something too I would love to see. So like it doesn't feel like, if you're in one of those sports that isn't like the big money maker, you don't feel like you're getting, the short end of the stick. But also at the same time, like, do you make that argument of, are you bringing in that much money? Doesn't, do you deserve that? That's kind of aspect of it too. It's like, there's no way of making everyone happy with making any sort of change. It's just kind of like finding something where the least amount of people are going to complain about it is like the best way to put it, if you ask me.
David, if I were to ask you in the next 3 to 5 years, I'll put a cap on the next half decade.
Oh boy.
Do you think there's going to be some sort of major change again in college football? Whether it is an expansion, whether it is an NIL rate regulation, or whether it's maybe another high profile coach coming to college? Like, what do we think the future of the sport's going to be?
I mean, there's definitely going to be something. As much as I would love regulation of some sort, I don't know if that will actually happen, or if it does, if it's actually going to be like meaningful. We could see more coaches coming down as it's becoming more like a mini, NFL in a way um with there being general managers now. Andrew Luck is a general manager now for
I
Stanford.
forgot about that for Stanford. Yep, his
Um,
alma mater.
yeah.
What? Let me ask you this. I forgot to ask this. Do you think there's going to be? Because I think there should be. I think it would solve a lot of this issue. Do you think there should be, at least for Division One, a college football commissioner?
And I guess probing question, what's like, are you trying to like also see like what powers he would have
I think
essentially?
it would be very similar to like one of Roger Goodell or an Adam Silver. It's one guy, it's not a different guy for every conference. It's one guy who would control whatever regulation you would send forth for NIL. It'd be one guy who would discuss among the athletic directors for the major conferences about a college football expansion. It would be, one guy dealing with the different athletic departments for media rights. Like it would just be one essentially governing body to govern over even like rule changes, fines, suspensions for targeting or whatever you may be. like one overarching body that actually governs over college football because it doesn't have governance. And I think that's the biggest issue.
I would not be against it in terms of it being as long as it is someone who can be as impartial as possible to conference politics and like the heads of each of the major conferences are like, have like a gigantic sway on them or
Yeah.
something like that.
Like
Because like it,
I think you got to get a guy from like the sports world. Maybe it's a basketball guy, maybe it's a baseball guy that worked in the front office of a week or something like that. That doesn't have strong ties to a big ultra or something like that. Like you get basically a front office guy. Like I don't know, I use the example of like Troy Vincent, who's obviously the deputy commissioner and the vice president, whatever his title is at the NFL.
mhm.
Like you get a guy like him, right? Really has no power in the NFL. He has a little bit of power, but really nothing because Roger Goodell is the major guy that does everything. He, as far as I know, he doesn't have major ties. He may be an alma mater of a big university, but at this point, he doesn't have major ties to them. But he's worked in the front office and he knows how shit works, basically.
Right. I think that would be super beneficial, at least in terms of there being less of the for example the disintegration of the Pac-12, for example, becoming because of the greed of, ooh, we can go to Big Ten and get a lot money, or something along
Yeah,
those lines. It's like I think that would be great to also almost like act as like kind of like how the US government can be like, no monopolies, and like bust those deals that could
yeah,
potentially create a situation like that. Like, I think it would be a net positive for the sport because, like, if you love college football, like, you understand, like, the passion, the importance of rivalries and traditions and things, and like the conference realignment over the past couple of years has like really destroyed a lot of that, which is sad to see for the fan bases of all those teams.
yeah.
It would
I
be a positive for
I
sure.
think in general, the thing you can say about college football is in some ways the sport has never been better, and in other ways the sport has never been worse. And that's the time we're in. And I think it's only going to get better in some directions and worse in other directions.
I mean, isn't that the case with a lot of different things, a lot of different
That's the world we live in, man.
that's the world we live in.
It's 2025. Once again, thank you to our college football expert, David Profusek. We're going to have him on again, I'm sure, as the season kicks off again. David, this has been the state of college football. I appreciate you being on the show today, my man.
No, thanks for having me. I was very much looking forward to this show in particular, especially when you suggested it earlier on in the year, and I'm glad to do it again in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, that'll wrap it up for today's edition of Brandon's World. But on Thursday, as most of the NBA offseason moves have been made, I will list my current top 10 duos in the sport. Plus, it is that time of year. NFL training camps are about to open. So I will be ranking my top five. Probably not going to happen, but I'm throwing them out there. Unrealistic slash realistic bold predictions for the 2025 NFL season. All that's coming on Thursday, and the next Tuesday, Christian Eden in the state of the NFL. That's what's coming up on Brandon's World. Once again, thank you. Special thank you to David Profusek. We are in collaboration with the one, the only Voltage Live. My social media links are in the description below. And peace. Like that clip from the Brandon's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brandon's World podcast right here on YouTube.